Cape Codders have always depended on the sea for survival. From the 1600s to the Revolutionary War, life was difficult. With hard work, planning, a bit of luck, and an abundance of fish and shellfish to provide protein in between the limited growing seasons of summer, folks managed to survive. By the early 19th century, Cape Codders had figured out how to make money from the ocean. Salt-making, shipping, whaling, fishing, and shipbuilding were the mainstays of the Cape's maritime economy in the 1800s. Cape Cod's towns and harbors were booming with activity, but it couldn't last. By the second half of the 19th century, virtually every marine-based industry had collapsed or died out, and the local economy was in a free-fall. Residents left in large numbers. Some Cape towns saw their populations decline by as much as half. Falmouth's population decreased by 15%. The Cape's once thriving towns desperately needed something to stimulate the economy. The arrival of rail lines to Falmouth in 1871 brought wealthy entrepreneurs from Boston and New York. They were Cape Cod's first tourists. These transplanted businessmen saw opportunity in Falmouth's vacant shorelines and buildings. One of the first resort communities on Cape Cod was Falmouth Heights. Started in 1870 by a group of Worcester businessmen, it was built on what had been the town's last salt works. The plan for Falmouth Heights was modeled after Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard, another popular resort of the time, with 600 lots intended for small cottages. The cost was $250 per cottage. Over the next 20 years, more facilities were added, such as a park, a boardwalk, an observatory, a casino, and a summer camp. In the height of the summer season, musical performances, lectures, and other amusements were held nightly. The development of other tourist areas in Falmouth followed a similar pattern. By the 1880s, grand hotels with names like the Tower House, Terrace Gables, and Sippawisset Hotel were popping up in areas of abandoned maritime facilities and funded by out-of-town investors. They attracted hundreds of fashionable middle and upper-class visitors to the town and established Falmouth as a respectable, desirable tourist destination. Tourism brought much-needed economic opportunity, while fundamentally transforming the town's entire social and economic landscape, not to mention its shoreline. Falmouth residents were ambivalent towards these changes. While they may have had little patience for the demanding and often eccentric ways of upper-class, out-of-town guests, they needed the jobs and the business. City folks relished the pristine beaches and crisp, clean air and eschewed the more socially driven resorts such as Newport. They were charmed by the small cottages, the salty fishermen, the old whaling captains, and the romance of life by the sea. What they discovered in the Cape's small provincial towns was a vision of New England culture, hardworking, independent, and idiosyncratic, that had largely disappeared from other parts of the state. Local Falmouth artists such as Frank L. Gifford and E.F. Lincoln worked to capture its rugged individuality and its maritime history, thereby cultivating today's popular image of Cape Cod. Today, the local economy is still driven by the tourism model that emerged in Falmouth in the late 1800s. Cape businesses and cultural institutions still strive to preserve and celebrate that early 19th century image of a bustling coastal community, delightfully eccentric and fiercely independent. After all, that's exactly what tourists have been coming to see for more than 100 years.